Good. Everybody ready? Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday, July 15th Reno City Planning Commission meeting. The first agenda item is Pledge of Allegiance. Carl, are you going to help us out?
I can, yes. Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Michelle, roll call, please.
Peter Gower. Absent. Oh. Okay, Mark Johnson.
Here.
Paula Levis.
Here.
Alex Felto.
Here.
John Marshall is absent. Kathleen Taylor. Kathleen, you're on mute. Can you? Kathleen, you're on mute.
Here, sorry.
Okay, thank you. So
Here.
we have a quorum. Nobody can leave the meeting. We only have 4 at the moment. So just give you a heads up.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. Moving on to item number 3, public comment. Do we have any public comment, Michelle?
I do not have anybody registered for general public comment at this time.
Thank you. And then our next item is workshop. I believe Angela or staff is going to give us a report on case number TXT 20-00006 development agreement. And this was continued from a previous meeting.
Okay, I am going to share my screen, so bear with me 1 minute. Excellent. Okay, so what we'd like to do for the next 45 minutes or so is give you guys a little bit more background and history of development agreements, why we have them, what the requirements are, so that you can have a better understanding of what's being proposed with the text amendment. So for the workshop portion, this is just for discussion purposes. You won't actually be taking any action. When we start the 6 p.m. hearing, then we will open the text amendment agenda item, and then you guys can actually vote on that item. So this again is a workshop, open for discussion. I have about 5 slides that I'm going to walk through with you. We also, once I'm done with the presentation, we have Brooke Oswald, who is the staff who worked on this, and Jasmine Maida, who is the legal staff who also helped participate in drafting of the development agreement text amendment. So to begin with, again, I wanted to kind of start at the basics, is what is a development agreement? One thing I don't think everyone realizes is that this is a voluntary contract between 2 parties, one being the city and the second being the property owner. So it's not something that is required. It is something that both parties have to agree to. Both parties have to agree to what's included in that. It's not something that goes through a public hearing process in the same way that we do public hearing processes for a special use permit or a tentative map. It's a contract. So it's not necessarily a project where we're looking at specifics like what's the setbacks of this project. It's more of a contractual obligation outlining the terms or the conditions of a project. And why do we have them? So this is something that many jurisdictions all over the nation use. It allows flexibility on one hand, but it also binds a project on another hand. So there's kind of this win and loss on both sides. From the developer's perspective, the incentive for them to enter a development agreement is that it provides certainty. When you have this contractual agreement ahead of time, you know what the rules are. We've seen oftentimes with planned unit developments where they go through this sometimes 2-year process, going through public meetings, working out all the agreements. The development agreement gives them a little bit more security up front and outlines the basic parameters of a project before the project has to come forward. From the local jurisdiction side, the benefit to a development agreement is usually there's something that they're getting. A lot of times it would outline maybe fees, because we don't have an impact fee structure here at the city of Reno beyond certain fees, like a fire fee, for instance. We don't have a fire impact fee set up. So a development agreement would give the city the ability to have fees that are outside of our typical impact fee. So there's some give and take from both ends on those types of things. It also outlines when we have public improvements. A lot of times, other jurisdictions use development agreements along with PUDs. So it would outline when a sewer line would be installed, or when it would be upgraded, or when intersections would be improved with traffic lights, and that's based on big projects or the timing of projects. So all of those things are outlined separately through a development agreement, and not with necessarily a special use permit or a PUD. It's that separate document that basically outlines the parameters that both parties have agreed to. A lot of jurisdictions use development agreements when they're dealing with affordable housing issues. We at the city don't have a requirement for affordable housing. And so a lot of jurisdictions, especially in California, they use this tool to require affordable housing. So it could potentially outline how many units have to be affordable, what percentage that, they would call it that the AMI, the average median income, that affordability has to include. So a lot of those things could be determined up front, and that kind of takes the guessing game out of it for, again, both parties involved. And then who uses development agreements? So this is something that is allowed per NRS. And we were looking just within the state of Nevada, how many of our local jurisdictions have zoning code sections that also include language on development agreements. And so here's some examples. We didn't look at every single jurisdiction, but these are the ones that generally have development associated with them. They're the bigger jurisdictions. And all of them do include zoning code language specific to development agreements. And they're all different. Some jurisdictions have very few guidelines, and they refer just to state law. One of these jurisdictions, I think, had 2 lines in their code of what's required with the development agreement. Other jurisdictions have 5 pages in their code specific to development agreements. So there's not necessarily one template that we're all using the same. Again, we all have state law, we have to follow state law, and then some go above and beyond that with their requirements. And this is the key thing that I wanted to go over with you guys right now, is what is required per NRS. So here is kind of an outline of the basic minimums that development agreements have to include. So regardless of what our code says, this trumps what every development agreement needs to include. One is the duration of the agreement. Some agreements are shorter, 5 to 10 years. Other are longer, 20 years, because it depends on the development project. If it's a big master plan community, most of the time those don't develop for 20 years. So a development agreement associated with the big project that's anticipated to develop over a long period of time would have a longer duration versus a project that was just one building. And then within NRS, it does outline what constitutes a breach of that agreement. So that is all outlined up front. Again, both parties have to agree that if either of them breach that agreement, the agreement becomes null and void. NRS also requires that council can review the development agreement at least once every 2 years, or 24 months or 2 years. So within each development agreement, if they want to change those terms, they can do that. But at a minimum, state law requires that it goes back to council for review once every 2 years. And then these are the items that may be provided in the agreement. Things, again, that we would typically see. So a list of permitted uses is one of them. Development that outlines what the intensity or density is. I was looking at one today that was in Sparks, and it outlined kind of bookends of what the intensity was going to be for a development. This was a project that didn't require a PUD. It was ultimately going to come in over phase time with tentative maps. And that development agreement was approved first, several years before a tentative map was submitted. And it outlined that density shall include, minimum of, I think it was like 18 dwelling units up to 30 dwelling units per acre. So it kind of provided some bookends so that when the development actually came forward, they had to be able to comply with that, but within a certain range. That also typically would include a maximum building height and size of buildings. We would see that more typically in an urban area where we have more of a city-type development rather than like a big subdivision with houses. Dedication of land for public use or payment lieu and fees in lieu. So that is if somebody was going to dedicate a portion of land to be used for a public park, that would be outlined in the development agreement. If there was anything else that the land was going to be dedicated for, maybe it was environmentally sensitive land or land that would be dedicated for school use, that could be outlined in the agreement. Protection of environmentally sensitive land, that in particular areas like California is something that they often use development agreements for. Preservation and restoration of historic structures. That's something that we really haven't seen a whole lot of here in Reno, definitely not in terms of a development agreement, but it's something that could be done. And looking at areas, again, downtown's a good example, where maybe you are developing a city block, and maybe some of those structures are historic. You could call out ahead of time through this development agreement which structures would be preserved or restored and which ones would be going away. So again, from the city's perspective, the gain here is that they would be saving some of those historic buildings. From the developer's perspective, they are giving up use of development of that property and always preserving it as a historic structure. So there's the give and take on both ends. And the phasing of development. We've seen Washoe County in particular use development agreements to extend timelines. A lot of times when they have, again, master plan communities that are built out over a longer period of time, we've seen where they have used development agreements to extend the time in between tentative maps and final maps. There's a state law requirement, but through development agreements, you can stretch those timelines so that if you know maybe market conditions aren't going to warrant putting in your next phase within 2 years after your last phase, that development agreement would outline the ability to extend the time between recording final maps. Terms of infrastructure and financing, this is a big one, and this is where I see the bulk of Southern Nevada jurisdictions use development agreements for this purpose. They use it to help finance police stations, major roads, major infrastructure, things that our tax structure doesn't necessarily give us the ability to fund as local jurisdictions. So a lot of times development agreements will be used in place to talk about when this infrastructure will be provided, how it will be paid for. So all of that is determined upfront before the development comes forward. Terms and timing of annexation, again, that's only relevant if you have a property that is currently not annexed but going to be annexed. And then if there's any kind of improvement district, like a GID or a general improvement district or something specific to an area where you're defining how infrastructure will be funded through an improvement district, that could be outlined through a development agreement. And then anything related to fees and charges. I think a good example is Verdi. You just approved or City Council just approved the Meridian development, and one of the topics that came up was a fire service fee. Again, we don't have an impact fee as a city that would cover fire service, but we added a condition that outlines that when those homes come forward, they have to pay a fee. It was added as a condition. So a lot of times jurisdictions use the development agreement as a tool to have very specific requirements of when fees are due, where they go, what happens if, for instance, a development doesn't build for 10 years, do they have to give those fees back? All of that would be outlined in a development agreement versus in the past, what we've done is just add it as a condition of approval. When things change over time, we find that we have to go back and amend those conditions of approval, but through that development agreement process, you wouldn't have to go back and amend conditions. It would all be outlined through that separate agreement. There are two findings that City Council has to make when approving one of these agreements. One is A, is it consistent with the city's master plan? And B, is it consistent with law? And that's both Nevada and federal law. Those are the only two findings. So where we're at today, again, this portion of our code has been in place currently for about 20 years. We have only had one development agreement, and that was the Meadowood Ball development. That one was approved like 20 years ago, and it outlined infrastructure timing mostly related to traffic and how the intersection around Meadowood Mall was going to be put in, when it was going to be put in, how it was going to be paid for. There was also some specific language related to signage. And so one of the challenges we've seen over the last 20 years is that when a project comes forward, the current code requires that it has to be associated, if you're going to do a development agreement, it has to be associated with either a special use permit or a PUD or an SPD. And it also has to have a regional impact or be a project of regional significance. So that has been a challenge for some projects that maybe don't require a special use permit or don't require a PUD development, like a tentative map. May not fit this because it doesn't trigger a special use permit or a PUD, or it may not be a project of regional significance. So this is something that's been in code for 20 years, and it really hasn't been used all that much. The last probably 6 to 8 months, we've had, I could probably count a dozen different developers come to us with projects that are unique, that have said, will I trigger a special use permit? Do I go straight to building permit? What's the process? And there's certain projects that maybe would go straight to a building permit, but they have something unique about them that from a city's perspective, it would be helpful if we could condition something with them, if we could do a separate agreement with them that we would benefit because maybe it had something to do with fees, not impact fees, but maybe fees that they would be contributing to the area, or maybe that there's public land that they would like to dedicate, or private land that they would like to dedicate to make public. And so that it's come to our attention, I would say probably more so in the last 6 to 8 months, that this is a tool in our toolbox that we currently are not using, and we've had a lot of interest in developers that would want to use it. At this point, our direction from City Council, again, the policymakers, they have initiated a text amendment to move forward with the development agreement. This is something that was going to be part of the zoning code update. That zoning code update process is now looking at, we're now looking at approval probably in December. So we're, again, another 6 months out before the zoning code update's approved. So this is something that our council felt should be move forward now, and we can help development. And again, there's a benefit for both the city and the developer. This is not a situation where if a developer comes forward and says, I want X, Y, and Z, and I'm not willing to give the city anything in exchange, City Council just says no. I mean, it's as easy as, do both parties agree or not? Is there a benefit to the city? Is there a benefit to the developer? So from that perspective, council is seeing the benefit of using development agreements as a tool in the toolbox. So what is before you and what's in your staff report is the red line version. And we took a good look. And again, we worked with legal, we worked with our planning staff, and we said, should we start over with this? Should we make some quick fixes? What's the best way to deal with our current code? And we went back and we looked at what NRS requires. We looked at a number of other communities and what they write in their development agreement code section. And again, everyone's different across the board. So we tried to put forth something that meets the intent of what council has asked us to do, and also follows with NRS. So the red line version that's in front of you, the big things that again, we'll call out here, is that we are trying to focus solely on NRS requirements. We are trying to deviate from anything that is outside of NRS, which means that we are also removing that requirement that development agreements have to be associated with projects of regional significance, and removing the requirement that they have to be associated with a special use permit or the PUD or the SPD. So if a project goes straight to building permit, but there's a mechanism that they want to use and the city wants to use to do a development agreement, this would give them the ability to do that. Again, there was a lot of language that was very redundant to NRS, and we said, let's take that out. We did that because oftentimes NRS changes, and rather than us have to update our code every time NRS changes, we just refer back to NRS. So if it changes, our code doesn't have to change, we just have to follow state law. And again, this provides a little bit more flexibility for us to be adaptable to each project as it comes in, because we're getting some really, some one-off, some unique projects, things that are really outside of the box that don't necessarily fit with a typical subdivision or master plan community. So this provides a lot more flexibility for, again, city council to make some of these decisions through a development agreement when otherwise there wouldn't be a mechanism to do that. One thing that's different with this staff report compared to the last staff report is that what I heard from Planning Commission was the concern that why aren't development agreements reviewed by Planning Commission? So we've added that language back in, and again, this is at your discretion. If you choose to forward that request to council, we'll be putting a memo together saying that it is your preference to have Planning Commission review development agreements. This is scheduled for review by City Council next week. So our staff report for them has already gone out. We'll be giving them a memo based on feedback from you guys tonight. But I wanted to include some language so that if you choose to recommend that Planning Commission review development agreements, we've added some language to give you something maybe that if you choose to forward to City Council. So other than that, again, we wanted to make this a workshop format, open it up to questions. And again, we have legal on the line, and we also have staff planning on the line, and we can bring them in to help answer some of your questions.
Okay, thank you, Angela. Commissioners, questions?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Velto. Thank you for the presentation. I guess I have a few questions about why was it originally associated with SUPs, PUDs, and SPDs?
Historically. And Brooke, if you're on the line, can you, I know you spent a lot of time going back and looking at the original staff report from 20 years ago. Did you find any information that specifically addressed why those discretionary reviews had to be associated with these projects?
Yes, and in reading through the old staff reports and the old notes and everything, there was a concern that it wouldn't be reviewed by the Planning Commission. And so the discretionary reviews were one way to ensure that Planning Commission would have a look at it. And that's how I understood of why that was incorporated. They felt that they needed the SUP, PUD, SPD instead of what is being proposed currently is that Planning Commission is reviewing those voluntary contracts or the development agreements for conformance with the master plan. So really making sure that it meets the goals of the master plan and what is being proposed, both as Angela stated, the give and the take, or how what as both parties are looking at it, that's in conformance with our master plan.
So
and then as far as the projects of regional significance, they at the time they felt they were not sure about staff time and what it would cost to do a development agreement. And so they felt that to move forward with a development agreement, they needed to have a project that was big enough or a project of regional significance. In kind of analyzing that, and as Angela stated, we are getting a number of projects coming in that are very unique, who don't meet any of those requirements or don't have to meet those requirements, but where the city may benefit from having a development agreement from that.
Okay, thank you. That helped. I guess my follow-up question to that is, what role would Planning Commission have in reviewing the development agreement? Is it strictly then to review its conformance with the master plan? Or is there an added layer of kind of fact-finding or analysis that we would have to do?
Correct. Per the way it's written, it would be conformance with the master plan. Now, this may be associated with the development. The development you'd see in the future, it may go straight to building permits. So it's really hard to have a set of findings for the Planning Commission to make outside of the master plan. So that review of the master plan, in looking at similar municipalities, that is a similar method that the city of Las Vegas uses. Also, the city of Sparks also has their Planning Commission review development agreements for conformance to the master plan.
Okay, I guess I'm concerned then what the purpose is of the planning.
Are you guys having some sound issues? I'm hearing a lot of feedback and crackling.
Yeah, I think, Brooke, what we may have you do is not use your camera audio and maybe use your phone audio. That might help.
Thank you. Okay. Go ahead. Also.
Thank you. I guess I don't see the purpose in planning commission reviewing the agreement then. If our only role is to determine whether or not there's conformance to the master plan, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that was something the council had to look at anyway. I'm concerned in two ways. The first is it may cause council to care less when they're evaluating its conformity with the master plan, or it makes it redundant because we're doing the exact same thing that council would be doing. So what is it staff's prerogative for planning commission to review these, or is it merely because that was the request at the prior meeting?
Yeah, when the initial text amendment language came out, the staff report that you had on July 1st, it did not include planning commission's review. And the reason for that is we were trying to follow state law more so than come up with additional things. But based on the feedback at the last planning commission, we heard concerns from several of you that felt there should be a review by planning commission. So we added some language, should you choose to have something to look at, and forward on to city council. But what's in front of city council right now is what went to you guys on July 1st. So the staff report at that time did not include planning commission review. But again, this is the opportunity now, or when you vote at the 6 p.m. hearing, if there are things that you feel should be added or changed and you want planning commission review, this is the time to put those recommendations forward and we'll give those to council.
Okay, so that makes sense. I'm all for uniformity. It creates predictability for developers, and that's good. The only other thing I wanted to ask about is in the staff report for the last hearing, and I think it's probably in this one as well, it said that the fee for a development agreement is like $10,000, which is significantly higher than other jurisdictions. Do we have any say over that, or is that all council?
That is also council. They vote on the fees on a yearly basis, and so that's what they voted on the last time they did the update. So when they do budgets, I think they voted on that probably in, I want to say, May timeframe. If they want to amend that, that will be next year when we do fee review again, unless they choose to amend it prior to that. But that is a council decision.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Johnson's questions.
Please go ahead, Mr. Johnson, Commissioner Johnson.
I guess the first thing I'll bring up, the sound issue, I think we're getting reverb from whatever's happening in chambers. So I'm not sure, Angela, how the microphones are set up in there, but I'm like hearing myself a half a second after I speak.
Are you guys all having that problem?
Yes.
The echo? I'm not sure. I'm going to look at our IT folks and see if they can work on that. And maybe if everyone mutes, I'll mute myself as well. It might be on my mic.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens. Oh, that sounds better. So the question that I would have, I guess, as a follow-up to Commissioner Velto, does the development agreement, once it's in place, does it basically preclude any additional, like, SUP requirements? Would we still have the potential for, even though there's development agreement in place, you would still have to go through a special use permit on a project? And again, it's a hypothetical type question, but does the existence of a development agreement preclude any of the other standard situations that we might have for additional review?
And I'll step in on that. So if for some reason council chooses to write the development agreement to not require a special use permit, that is something they could do. In the past, that is not typically how development agreements have been used. Again, looking at other jurisdictions, that doesn't circumvent the public hearing process. If it triggered a tentative map, they cannot circumvent the tentative map process. That is a state law process. Special use permits are kind of a unique thing. I would say it gives them council the ability if they choose to, but typically how they've been used statewide is not to eliminate public hearing processes. It's pretty much to outline some of the bigger issues prior to going through that special use permit or kind of concurrent with that special use permit.
Okay, so, you know, again, as following up on the point that Commissioner Velto was making, since the findings are so slim, there could be projects that would still require a special use permit because when the development agreement is established, there's not enough known about what it's going to look like that there may still be some of our triggers for that. So then I guess the kind of the second part to that is in looking at the redline version, and you know, you pointed out the fact that the NRS only has a couple of things that have to be in there. I did notice that in our original development agreement, there was a section with findings listed. And the findings were, I think, kind of in keeping with what NRS says may be included. And I'm just wondering if staff thought about if there's any discussion at the staff level in terms of keeping any of those findings in there as additional items for council review, some of which seem to I think speak directly to reasons for the development agreement above and beyond just the master plan. So I'm just wondering if staff had a conversation or discussion about that.
Yeah, and again, one of the key things we were trying to do at this point was to align ourselves with NRS. And because NRS only has 2 findings associated with development agreements, we revised the RMC to match those 2 findings and not to provide additional findings above and beyond that.
Okay. And then I guess the one other question I had just is, and this was more of a question, I think there's a little background that got me confused when we were talking about how these things came about. The actual listing in our agreement or in our breakdown here talks about that the council approved this actually on January 26, 2020. I believe that's a typo from your presentation, that the original ordinance was actually done on January 26th of 2000. Am I reading that right? I'm looking at page 3.
That is correct, Commissioner Johnson.
Okay.
That is correct. That's a typo. It was originally approved by City Council in right around 2000.
Okay, so then,
approximately about 20-year time period.
okay, so then if I'm understanding right, since it was based on Meadowood Mall, it would have been with respect to development around the mall, since the mall was already there in 2000.
Correct. The developer had the mall established, and they were looking for a certain level of comfort as they moved forward. There's a PUD associated with that. It's kind of a unique property, but it was the developer that really sort of moved forward to do that. The city at that time did not have staff or resources, so a third party was hired and was paid for by the developer, and then worked with city staff to devise that section of code.
Okay. Thank you. That just got me confused when I was looking through it. Madam Chair, I don't have any additional questions for the workshop right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Olivas, do you have any questions? You're on mute.
I got to do both the phone and the computer. No, nothing particular right now.
Okay, I have a quick question, Angela. My biggest concern is that when these development agreements are created, that there is some sort of public process about the approving them and what is in them. So I think when they go to city council for approval and they have these two findings to make, does city council have the opportunity to say, we don't like what's in the agreement and send it back? Or can they only say, oh, it's consistent with the master plan and it's consistent with, it meets NRS?
Yep, so.
So is there, what is that process?
Because it is a contract, it's not a requirement that it's either yes or no. So this is an agreement, both parties have to agree to. So there could be give and take, it could be something that requires it go back to council multiple times before they get it right. Ideally, again, all of that kind of would have been discussed. You know, staff is working with the developer, trying to understand what they're trying to do. When it goes to council, they can review it. If there's something they're not comfortable with, they can remand it back and have changes made and then have it come back. Anytime it goes before council, it is a public hearing item. And so the surrounding parcels are noticed, similar to how we notice tentative maps or special use permits or zone change. That same process applies to a development agreement approval from council.
Okay, and then in the section over, I don't know, it used to be A and B, at the very beginning, it talks a lot about the administrator and the administrator's, I guess, involvement in the development agreements. They're going to be responsible for applying, administering, negotiating, and enforcing the development agreement. So I imagine that's going to happen. And then once that process takes place, then it's presented to council.
Yeah, and how we internally at the staff level have approached development agreements, again, we've had multiple discussions with other developers that have wanted to do development agreements. We've kind of started down this road on other projects and they've either pulled back or decided not to go down that road. Internally, our legal staff takes the lead. So they're the ones that are actually drafting the contract. We as a team from Public Works, the fire department, the police department, the planning department, the engineering department, whoever is involved in what the agreement includes are part of those conversations. And that's at the staff level. So it's a team effort. We're all coming together because we represent different expertise here at the city. You know, as planning, we are not the ones making decision about sewer pipes and storm drain. You know, we talk to Public Works to see how it impacts their infrastructure. So from that perspective, we all come together to try and come up with what makes sense. And then legal works typically with the applicant's legal staff or representative as well. And they come up with that final contract.
Okay. And then my last question is under section 18 -20-107. If the development agreement is canceled or terminated, there's some language and it says that under the existing rules, regulation, and ordinances of the city absent the development agreement, they can move forward. Is there an example of that you can help me understand? So if we have a development and a developer and a development agreement, and the development agreement goes away, what happens to the development? Do they get to proceed with the development pursuant to permits issued prior to the date of termination?
And probably a good example that I've seen is when we have large developments that have a tentative map, maybe not a master plan community, but a tentative map with a lot of lots. And they've done a development agreement where they've extended the timeline of when they have to bring forward different phases. And per state law, they have 2 years in between each phase to record the next final map. Development agreements have been used to extend those timelines. If a development agreement were to go away, then those timelines would no longer be in place and it would revert back to NRS. So if before you had, let's say, 5 years to record the next phase of development, but your development agreement went away, then that means you would only have 2 years to record the next phase of your development. If after 2 years you weren't able to move forward with that next phase, then the tentative map expires and you have to start over with the next phase of development.
Okay, thank you. I think I understand.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Johnson, I just wanted to follow up on one of the questions. Angela, when you spoke about how this gets reviewed, I know anything that gets submitted right now for Planning Commission with respect to an SUP, zone change, master plan amendment, or even items that go straight to council like abandonments and that, there's a sort of a development review memo, the DRM, that gets put together and published, and I know we get it, and you can actually subscribe to that if you're not a member of one of the boards or anything. If somebody was going to be putting in an application, I mean, is there an application process for a development agreement that would basically at least land there where it would end up being sort of put into the hopper where other people could be aware of it, even if it was, you know, not something that was going to come before Planning Commission or anything like that?
Yeah, and that's something we have talked about internally as well, is what is that process? It's not really clearly defined currently right now. We, as staff, are in the process of updating all of our applications, and a development agreement is one of the applications that we are going to create and put on our website so that when an application comes in, it follows the same process as a special use permit or a tentative map, right? You submit on a certain submittal date, you pay your fees, it starts the clock. But that application process does not exist today.
Okay, so I guess even now circling back to Commissioner Velto's comment from the very beginning in terms of whether Planning Commission would be involved in this or not, I guess to me, having a process that gets it out there for notification, you know, even 45 days before it comes to council, to me is actually satisfies Commissioner Taylor's desire to make sure people know about it, maybe even better than having it come before Planning Commission for essentially a rubber stamp of the two findings that are involved. So I guess in terms of the workshop format, that would be something that I would be interested in. I'm not sure how my fellow commissioners are about that, but to me, if there is a specific process that gets it into the system so anybody who's involved, not just the people waiting for the yellow card, would be able to participate in something like that.
Commissioner Levis, I'd like to follow on that. You mentioned workshop, and I guess I was kind of almost thinking the same thing. I didn't want to bog this down with too many meetings, but going back to the original description that Angela gave, that this is a negotiated contract, and the negotiation, right or wrong, seems to be with staff and legal counsel, and doesn't really get the input of either the Planning Commission or the City Council until it's pulled together and finally presented. I think a workshop format to find out what deal points are important before the negotiations start to give guidance to staff would be helpful too. And I don't know if that's the Planning Commission or the City Council, probably more them, but there could be a lot of, in a negotiated contract, there could be a lot of deal points that aren't touched on and still be in conformance with the master plan. So I think workshop format would be helpful to kind of kick things off in the direction that everybody wants.
Hey, Angela, why is there not a regulatory timeline for a hearing date on these?
Just following state law, they do not have a timeline outlined in state law. Everything else we do, all of our other entitlements, it's defined typically in state law. But for whatever reason, state law doesn't have a timeline for when development agreements have to get to council.
The large reason why there isn't a timeline is that it's, once again, it's a voluntary agreement, right? And so either party can say yes or no at any time in that. And so there is no specific timeline to say we will have a hearing by this date. If the city staff does not feel comfortable with it, what's being proposed on a development agreement, they don't have to write a recommendation of denial. We don't have to bring it forward. And so I think that's probably a large part of it too, is that it is a voluntary agreement. And until both parties are ready to kind of go forward with it, it doesn't need to have a timeline or a regulatory timeline with it.
Okay.
And maybe just to give you guys a little bit more of an example, Daybreak is probably the most recent example where they came in with a zone change and master plan and a PUD. As part of that approval, they also had a separate parks agreement, a fire service agreement. I think they also had maybe one or two other, separate agreements. Those agreements are not something that Planning Commission reviewed, but you guys reviewed the PUD. So you knew that a certain, amount of money was going to go towards a fire fee, or they were going to donate a fire truck. So all of that was generally outlined in the PUD, but the specifics of how that would happen was put into separate agreements. Those agreements get approved by City Council, but they're in association with a development. So similar, I would say, other jurisdictions have used development agreements, again, in association with master plan communities. They have PUDs, but the specifics and the details are often done through these development agreements that are processed either before the PUD or kind of concurrently with that PUD.
Okay. Commissioners, other questions, further discussion? So Angela, can we just move on to agenda item number 5?
Portion of the meeting and reopen the public hearing at 6 p.m.
I missed the first part of that, sorry.
So we do have to close this portion of the meeting, I believe, and reopen. And actually, I'm going to look at legal on this. We don't need to actually close the meeting. It's the same agenda. Carl, are you comfortable if
We've
we
already
just move
opened the
on?
meeting. Yes, we can just move on.
Okay.
Okay, looks like Commissioner Gower has joined us.
I have.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item number 5, which is unfinished business public hearings regarding case number TXT 2000006 development agreement. Angela, did you want to have a presentation again?
I think we're probably good. At this point, if you do have any other specific questions, we are looking for direction. So however you choose to make your motion, if there's additional information you want to modify or change or forward to City Council, we are looking for that input as part of this agenda item.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to put Commissioner Gower on the spot since he was just joined us. Do you have any questions or comments about this agenda item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My only discussion item, I guess, is just the timing of this amendment relative to the overall Title 18 update. And I apologize, I missed the workshop. You probably went over that.
Yes,
We did
so
not.
I will answer that. The Title 18 right now is scheduled to start moving forward again. We are looking at adoption probably in December. So that will be at the another 5 to 6 months from now. Because City Council has initiated this text amendment. This has come from them. So they have asked staff to move this forward ahead of the zoning code amendment, or the zoning code update, because they feel that this is something that would help developers now, in this time of COVID and in this time of, trying to be proactive and help the development community. This is something they've been working on. I think this is a theme that we've been hearing from our council for the last probably year and a half, is they're trying to be more proactive and development friendly. So they have asked us to initiate this text amendment and move this forward now outside of the zoning code update.
Madam Chair, if I could just ask a follow-up question. Angela, does doing this work divert time away from doing Title 18? I mean, is it kind of counterproductive in a way, or is it just two separate things that are running on kind of parallel tracks at this point?
It is. So we've probably had maybe 7 different text amendments since the zoning code update process has been in place. You'll remember about a year ago, there was a group of text amendments that went forward that was part of the Housing Task Force, part of the mayor's initiative, that again, were outside of the zoning code update, but that was something that council wanted to push forward now because they knew the zoning code update was just taking longer and they wanted to see something out there now. This is similar to that. So we are working on this, I would say, concurrently with the code update. We should actually have the next version of the zoning code update probably out there to the public next week. So things are definitely happening with the code update as well as this text amendment.
And so just a last question with a follow-up on that. You don't perceive any sort of conflicts or something that would come out of the Title 18 update process with those revisions that would, conflict with these amendments in any way or require any sort of go-backs? I think the last thing that we want to do as a city is to go through this text amendment process, finish Title 18, and then realize, oh, shoot, we missed something. We need to go back and redo it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, whatever's adopted on this text amendment is what we will put into the new zoning code update. So I would say, the only one-off that I could find is if we adopt a text amendment and we realize that maybe there was something that we should have done to improve the language, we could do that as part of the zoning code update. But at this point, whatever's adopted by council is strictly what will be just added to the new zoning code.
Thank you. That's all I have, Madam Chair. Thanks.
On this, I guess my position is, I just want to make sure there's some sort of public process for vetting what's inside these agreements. Whether that comes to Planning Commission, you would hope City Council would want our opinion or our expertise on this, so because we are the kind of keepers of the master plan. But wherever it happens, as long as the public has access and is noticed about what's inside these agreements, I think that is, responsible. And I'm not sure what the best mechanism is for that.
Commissioner Belto, I'll just say I don't understand. I don't think we should have government just to have more government. And in my mind, if the city council is going to make the exact same finding that we'll have to make, I don't see the point in forcing an applicant to have to spend money to go through the process of coming before us when the decision as to whether it conforms with the master plan, they're in a better position, in my opinion, to make because they designed the master plan. I just think every time that we put another roadblock in and make it more difficult on an applicant, we're making it more costly for the person to buy that home that they're building. We should be making it easier for them to build instead of making it more difficult.
Madam Chair, doesn't the proposed language that was presented in the staff report include Planning Commission review?
Need an update on that.
Yeah, so
Angela.
sorry about that, Peter. What we did, the original staff report that went to you guys for the July 1st meeting did not include language for Planning Commission review. What we heard at that meeting was that was one of the big concerns from several of you. So if your recommendation is to include Planning Commission review, we added some language to this version for you to consider. As a heads up, the text amendment goes to City Council next week. So our staff report has already been prepared. Our intent after tonight, we're going to prepare a memo with your comments and we'll forward that on to them so they'll have that before the City Council meeting. But the way, again, that we redrafted this is based on your feedback from the last meeting where some of you had mentioned that you wanted Planning Commission review. So we added language, something for you to consider if that's the direction you choose to go.
Okay. Yep, I appreciate that, and I did support the language that was added in there. And I thought, just to Commissioner Velto's point, I thought it was, I think we talked about it at the last meeting, helpful to have Planning Commission, you know, just provide additional information from a planning perspective to support those findings relative to, or I guess the one finding relative to consistency with the master plan. So that's why I think it's valuable to the process and to Commissioner Taylor's point too, for, you know, the additional step for the public to engage. So I'm definitely in support of that.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Johnson. I would, I guess, go back to my in the actual earlier discussion that I would, in my mind, I think that there needs to be some level of process established for the application so that the notification of what's going on in advance of having it just be on the council's agenda, whether that mechanism is the development review memo, some version of a workshop, something that would allow for input. I appreciate Commissioner Gower's comment about having it come before the Planning Commission, and I guess the difference maybe with something like this than on a special use permit or some of the other things that we're looking at is if there's a fee for the development review or, you know, a development agreement, that fee includes whatever, you know, review is needed, whether it's staff time, Planning Commission time, council time. I understand the idea of additional time in the process, but I think there's something to me that's still just a little concerning about a process that involves all of the city staff working on a legal agreement with the developer, and then that is bundled up in a tight little bow and presented for a presentation to City Council that the public is allowed 3 minutes to weigh in on. I think there needs to be a little bit more ability for something that, you know, yes, it could be something as small as giving somebody an opportunity to, you know, put in a sewer line that the public wasn't able to do, and I think that's great. But I think there's other aspects that could be substantially larger that might be a bigger impact on any number of things. And while I can appreciate, you know, just having the one finding be in agreement with the master plan, that gives us such broad latitude, as we've seen from our own reports, in terms of what is and is not in conformance with the master plan. And a lot of these complicated projects or unique projects that you're talking about, who's to say if it's in conformance with one portion of the master plan, it may be in conflict with another, and what's to you know, set the standard on that. And I think council certainly, it's their purview to make that determination, but I think they shouldn't be expected, we shouldn't expect them to just be making that based on one single meeting. So I would support the language going forward with it being at the Planning Commission, but I would also be okay if it's not there based on having some other kind of language to allow for a process to be out there that involves having some kind of ability to input on this before it's actually at City Council for approval. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are you ready to put that in a form of a motion?
Yeah, let me just find where my recommended motion here is and see if I can modify it if there's no additional comment.
Commissioner Olivas, I'll make a comment, and I guess kind of after the last meeting, I was leaning towards not needing planning commission, and I think kind of thinking through this as a bit of a negotiation, not that we would be doing the negotiation, but I think that it's kind of a preliminary. It's the public's first look at the full package. I think it gives the public an opportunity to step back and comment and give their comments to the city council. It gives the city council an opportunity to hear our comments and the public's and the kind of the final presentation of the document. And I think it's a good open forum when most of the negotiations taken on not in as public of a forum. So I think that I've changed and I do support including the language of the Planning Commission seeing it.
Okay, ready, Commissioner Johnson? We are.
I guess in the case of TXT 20-00006, development agreements, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to recommend that City Council approve the text amendment by ordinance with the recommendations presented from the Planning Commission for changes to the draft language, as well as the concerns raised by Planning Commission with respect to both public input and the timing of this in terms of being inputted into the Title 18. Does that wrap? I think that, and based on that, I can make the findings that are required for the TXT amendment.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Commissioner Gower, I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I will say that we asked for public comment under agenda item number 5. Michelle, did we have any comment form for agenda item number 6?
I did not have any request to speak for this item. No.
Madam Chair, I believe we received an email correspondence on this item.
Yes, so let's go through it real quick and do disclosures. Commissioner Olivas?
Commissioner Olivas, I received the email.
Commissioner Johnson?
Received and read the email.
Commissioner Belto?
The same.
Commissioner Gower?
Commissioner Gower, as did I.
Commissioner Taylor, as did I. Thank you for that. So we have a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Could you do a
Opposed?
roll call vote, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Point of
Well,
order.
Did you want to do that on everything?
I
Okay, could we do a roll call vote, please?
Excuse me, Chairwoman, or point of order? Could you just clarify what is the motion on the floor?
The motion on the floor is moving to recommend approve the text amendment by ordinance, which includes the Planning Commission review, and recommended that the discussion items from this with respect to public comment and Title 18 process be included in what's presented to council. Did I summarize that right, Angela?
I believe so. So in general, the intent was to have Planning Commission as part of the review process. and also to outline an administrative procedure, just acknowledging that this would go to the public for review. If a development agreement comes in, that there would be an opportunity for the public to know it has been submitted and to read it and review it outside of the public hearing process to council. And then also that, does that cover it? And then also concerns over moving this forward now rather than waiting for it to be moved forward as part of Title 18.
That's correct. So that was the motion with all of the additional comments over the top of it. So, thank you. And Commissioner Belto, thank you.
I'm gonna call roll. Oh, sorry. Okay, I'll call it. We have a first, we have a second. Commissioner Olivas?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Gower?
Yes.
Commissioner Velto?
No.
Commissioner Taylor, yes. So we have a 4-1 approval. Motion passes. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to agenda item number 6, public hearings. Agenda item 6.1, case number LDC 2000067, Silver Dollar Estates zone change. Do we have a presentation from the applicant?
We have Stacy Huggins on the line. Stacy, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can.
Okay. Sorry, I'm having some troubles. But if you can hear me, then I can attempt to share my screen and do this quick presentation. I apologize. I don't have my picture there because I'm actually at home.
That's okay, we remember you.
Thank you. Can you see the screen okay?
Yes, we can
can.
see it. Okay, Stacy, you have
Okay.
15 minutes.
Okay. So just really quick, a number of you will recall that Silver Dollar Estates was approved back in June of 2018. What you see there in the yellow, the bigger project, represents all of Silver Dollar Estates. The request in front of you tonight is specific to what we had called Area 4, and that would be the area shaded in green in the lower left-hand corner. We are seeking a zoning map amendment from community commercial to single family 4,000. And just to show you in a comparison slide, so this property currently is zoned community commercial. The whole southern half of Silver Dollar Estates was zoned community commercial, which is inconsistent with the master plan designation. So we're trying to, it's a little bit of a cleanup effort by going to the single family 4,000. Community commercial, as I said, is not consistent with the mixed neighborhood master plan designation, but the SF4 is. It would provide for a mix of housing options and densities that are different than in the community commercial. Right now, under community commercial, there's not a cap on density. So by going to the SF4, you would actually end up with a cap on densities on this area. And interestingly enough, the SF4 designation is the conforming single-family residential zoning designation, as opposed to the SF6 zoning that is directly north of this site. So, just very quickly in closing, again, the SF4 conforms to the mixed neighborhood master plan designation. It's an appropriate transition between the community commercial that still exists to the east and the SF6 to the north. It supports uses similar to the surrounding area. And then compared to what's been previously approved on this site through the Silver Dollar Estates project, as I mentioned earlier, it would actually put a density cap on this at 10.89 units to the acre as opposed to no density cap with the CC. And ultimately, it will change the product that D.R. Horton is looking at for this area. So it would really, by default, reduce the amount of traffic coming out of here, the stormwater, and the sewer, all of which we understand and know are concerns in the North Valleys. So I'm sorry I kind of ran through that a little bit fast, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you, Stacy. I thought I saw Kyle. Do you have a presentation for us?
Hi, I do. I'm going to try and pull it up. Oh, it says I can't share until Stacy's is off.
I know, I'm trying to figure out how to do that.
Stacy, down at the bottom.
Sorry, I'm not logically.
Down at the bottom of your screen, it says stop sharing. Oh, never mind.
Did it go away?
Still won't let me share mine. I'm not sure.
I think you're still sharing, Stacy. If at the very bottom of the screen, does it give you the option to stop sharing?
Well, I
There we
don't
go.
know. My whole computer.
Now you have unfriended us. You're good.
Hey, sorry. I'm so sorry, you guys.
All right. Can everybody see my shared screen now? Good. Thank you, Madam Chair and Commission. Kyle Chisholm, Assistant Planner for the record. Happy to be before you tonight presenting this item. So this is the Silver Dollar State Zone change. Stacy did a wonderful job covering just about everything I was going to talk about. So I'm just going to scroll through these maybe very quickly. And so this is a zone change request for a 17.13-ish acre site from CC to SF4. As Stacy mentioned, it's part of a previously approved tentative map and special use permit, Silver Dollar Estates. I'm just going to skip that one, go right to the zoning. This map, I like it because it kind of shows the map and planned subdivision around it. You can see Silver Dollar Estates to the north and east. Those are the planned and mapped subdivisions that have been processed. So you can see this parcel lies kind of in the south west corner of the overall project. And really, as Stacy highlighted, what the primary intent here is that the current CC zoning district doesn't allow for a detached single-family residential product, whereas the SF4 zone does. There's a variety, as I outlined in the staff report, a variety of the two zones differ dramatically from a land use perspective and from a development code perspective. So this SF4 zone would be more suitable to residential development in general, and specifically that type of detached product. And really, staff perspective on this change is that CC zoning designation doesn't comply with the current MX or mixed neighborhood master plan designation, and Just from an overall impact perspective, the CC zoning district allows for a lot of different commercial and industrial uses that SF4 doesn't allow for, and that would really probably not be appropriate for the area. So just from a land use planning perspective, the SF4 zone just really is more compatible with the area. I did receive one call and email from the same person that opposed, was in opposition of the zone change. Staff was able to make all the applicable zone change findings or zoning map amendment findings and recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval to the City Council. And I am available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Kyle. Okay, this is a public hearing. I'm going to ask the commission for disclosures, and then we'll open public comment. Commissioner Levis?
Commissioner Levis, I'm familiar with the site from previously and received email.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson previously visited the site and received the email.
Thank you. Commissioner Gower?
Commissioner Gower, as did I.
And Commissioner Velto?
Commissioner Velto, the same.
Commissioner Taylor, the same. Michelle, do we have any public comment?
I did not have anybody register to speak on this item.
Okay, thank you. We will close public comment and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Commissioners? Or a motion?
Madam Chair, I'm ready to make a motion.
Yes, Mr. Gower. Commissioner Gower.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just say I was originally a little bit concerned, but you know, the fact that it's bringing it into conformance with the master plan and it's just more consistent overall, I can make all of the findings. So based on that, in case number LDC 20-00067 Silver Dollar Estate Zone Change based on compliance with the applicable findings, I move to recommend that City Council approve the zoning map amendment by ordinance.
Thank you.
Johnson, I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. We have a first, we have a second. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Levis?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Gower?
Yes.
Commissioner Balto?
Yes.
And Commissioner Taylor? Yes. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy.
Have a good evening, everybody.
You too, Kyle. Sorry you had to get dressed up. Okay, agenda items 6.2 and 6.3 have been pulled because of a noticing error, and they will come back on August 5th. Is that correct, Angela?
That is correct. And just to clarify, it was a noticing error on our part, not the applicant's part. We apologize for that, but they will be renoticed and scheduled for the August 5th Planning Commission meeting.
Okay, moving right along. Agenda item 6.4, LDC 20000059, Charlin's PUD Planning Unit 9 Amendment. Michelle, do we have an application or a presentation from the applicant?
I think we're bringing in John Krompottek. Just one moment. John, can you hear us?
Can you guys hear me? I can see my, yeah, Michelle, thank you. Are you, Michelle, can you,
Yes.
can you guys hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay, it said muted, thank you very much. Can you see, can we get Brody Glenn on here? He registered, he is the applicant, and he's been texting me from afar. As in the other side, there's Brody,
Just one moment.
okay? Brody, let's get some video on you, full disclosure in Reno.
I am. There we go.
I got a little blind
There we go.
here. There we go. Thank you. This is the first time I've wanted to request or discuss the idea of a continuance on a Zoom meeting. So let me introduce Brody. Brody, do you have anything to say? Brody is the applicant, and he's very much engaged in the entitlement process with his projects. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knows that Brody will be involved in this, and he's very much knows his product. Right, Brody? Any
Yeah,
thoughts?
so thank you for your time. I was actually chairman of the City of Greenville, South Carolina Planning Commission. So I understand your time that you put in and at times how thankless the job can be. But just thank you for your time and appreciate your consideration for our project here in Reno.
Thank you, Brody. So,
Do you think you could ask Brody to state his name for the record and who he's with?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Brody Glenn with Centennial American Properties, 935 South Main Street, Greenville, South Carolina.
Great. Thank you, Brody.
thank you, Brody. Thank you, Kathleen. So I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of background. Up until a couple of days ago, we were fully committed to go to have this hearing. We, have staff support. We thought we dealt with the issues. We sent a letter out, co-signed by Brody and myself, to the immediate neighborhood. He met with the one person who responded, and so did I. And so, part of it was, and in the letter we said we'll be glad to host a Zoom meeting. We didn't get a response. And then all of a sudden, I'm getting a flood of emails from Nathan and from Carter and whomever else. I'm not sure how they divvy those up, but anyway, they were coming at us. And I'm going to guess it was, 20 or 25 people involved. So we discussed it yesterday. I sent staff an email. I called Chairman Kathleen Taylor this afternoon, discussed that we are going to do a broader outreach and try and manage some of the community issues that have come up. It's clear in the emails that there's been outrageous misinformation. They're thinking 3-story building vertical. That's not the case. They're thinking mini storage. That's the mini storage that comes to mind when we say mini storage. That's not true. And so, but as you guys know and would expect, the burden's on us to manage a lot of the community outreach and the community politics, so we're going to do our best. And with that, if you wanted to go over any exhibits, I just didn't think it was appropriate to dive into a PowerPoint. But we would request a continuance. I don't have a date in mind because we're not sure, again, with the COVID types of things that it presents, when we would have a Zoom neighborhood meeting. And but we do want a postponement. Do we need a date certain? Are you guys open to it? Brody, you and I didn't even talk about this, but do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think this, as quickly as we can have a meeting, we will. I think the best thing for us to do is we believe in our company that the process works and that listening to the neighborhoods, listening to the community, listening to staff makes all these projects better. And so that is our intent. We're all living in a different world with COVID. So trying to figure out, I've done probably 8 or 10 of these Zoom meetings, but it's complicated to figure out how do you get to the neighbors and how do you set up neighborhood meetings. So now we've got definitive information from surrounding residents that we can reach out to, and hopefully we can have that meeting in the next week or so. John, I don't know if we could make the 5th, but certainly I'd like to make the 19th if possible. Just depends on how quickly we can set that meeting up.
Excuse me, I muted myself, or maybe the chair muted me. You want to request 30 days then? That would be 4 weeks from today, basically, right? Is that the idea?
I think that's probably the right thing to do.
Does that work for staff in the commission?
Hey, thank you. This is Nathan Gilbert. If you want to continue it to the August 19th, August 5th would be the next available Planning Commission. August 19th would buy a little bit more time if that's the applicant's request.
I think that's appropriate.
Yeah, I guess we don't have public noticing things. I'm always thinking about noticing, Brody, but we don't have those. We just got to be reasonable and give people a chance to say yay or nay on joining us on a meeting. So that's not a big deal.
If we put this Commissioner Taylor, if we put a date on it, I think we don't have to re-notice. Is that accurate, Nathan? Angela?
That's correct. That would be a date certain public hearing. So if the commission entertains the applicant's request for continuance, that would be for August 19th. We would not need to re-notice that.
Yeah, okay, thank you. On behalf of the applicant, the Charlotte's PUD amendment, I am requesting a continuance of the Planning Commission hearing to the regular scheduled Planning Commission date of August 19th, 2020. Thank you.
That you wanted to present?
Hi, good evening, Commissioners. Nathan Gilbert, live from home. No, I don't. We were aware the applicant was going to request this continuance as the commission, and commissioners are aware there's been a great deal of community concern, and we certainly support additional outreach with the community before this goes to hearing.
Great, thank you. Nathan, this is a public hearing. I'm going to ask commissioners for disclosures. Commissioner Levis?
Commissioner Levis, I visited the site and I received a few emails.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson visited the site, received numerous emails and voicemails, and spoke with the applicant's representative.
Commissioner Gower?
Commissioner Gower visited the site and received and read as many emails as I could.
Commissioner Velto?
Commissioner Velto, the same.
Commissioner Taylor, I visited the site, received several emails, and spoke with the applicant's representative. Michelle, do we have any public comment forms for this item?
I did have one request to speak on this item, Carol Romanowitz. I apologize if I missed, but apparently she's not there, so we don't have anybody else requesting to speak on this item at this time.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. I'll bring it back to the commission for discussion or a motion for the continuance or question.
Madam Chair, if I could, just a comment. I just want to disclose that I will not be at the August 19th meeting. Not that that weighs into any decision. I just wanted to make the applicant and the commission and staff aware of that. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Peter.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Johnson, I'll just state also that I think this is a good choice by the applicant. I think there is an opportunity here for some additional discussion and understanding, and like to incorporate as much of the public feedback under this as possible before our discussion. So I support the decision, and I'm willing to make a motion for the continuance if there's no additional discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. I just want to make sure, I needed to close public comment. I think I did, but if I didn't, we closed public comment. So Commissioner Johnson, we are ready for your motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the case number LDC 20-00059, the Charlotte's PUD Planning Unit 9 Amendment, I move that we postpone the hearing to a date certain, August 19th, Planning Commission, regular Planning Commission meeting at the request of the applicant and support of the staff.
Commissioner Velto, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Great. We'll do a vote. Commissioner Olivas?
Commissioner Olivas, yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Gower?
Yes.
Commissioner Belto?
Yes.
And Commissioner Taylor, yes. Thank you, everybody. We will see you back in August.
Thank you very much. See you next month.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Okay, everybody, moving on to item 6.5, case number LDC 20000062, Sky Mountain Retail Center. Do we have a presentation from the applicant?
We are bringing John Munson online. Oh, is he not there? Oh, he's not there. Nathan? Nathan there?
Hi, yeah, this is Nathan Gilbert. John Munson does have, well, I believe, Michelle, is John Munson joining us this evening?
He did not log in.
Okay, then staff will speak on the applicant's representative's behalf. We did receive written requests to continue the item in order to allow the applicants and the applicant's representative to do additional community outreach. As the Planning Commission is aware, there's been a number of numerous emails and phone calls with community concern, and they did request in writing to continue this time certain to the August 19th Planning Commission hearing in order to facilitate additional community meetings.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. Commissioners' disclosures? Commissioner Olivas?
Commissioner Olivas, I visited the site and received emails.
Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, as did I.
Commissioner Gower?
Commissioner Gower, as did I.
Commissioner Velto? You might be on mute. You might be gone. Okay, Commissioner Taylor, I received emails and visited the site. Michelle, do we have any request to speak forms?
I did not receive any requests to speak on this item.
Okay. Commissioners, questions, comments, motion?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Johnson, I think as with the previous case, if the applicant is willing to request a postponement to work with the neighbors, I would fully support that based on the feedback that was received and would be willing to put a motion to that effect.
Sounds good.
Commissioner Gower, second.
Do we need a motion first?
I guess I'll just say, so it's a date, postponement of the meeting to a date certain, August 19th, is that correct, Angela? In the case of LDC 20-00062, again, based on the request of the applicant and support of staff. Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Commissioner Olivas?
Yes.
Please. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Gower?
Yes.
Commissioner Velto?
Yes.
And Commissioner Taylor, I'm a yes. Motion passes unanimously. I just want to know how many continuances and agenda items did you get dropped, former Chair Johnson, in one night?
I don't like to compare meetings to meetings. It has nothing to do with the makeup of the commission. So it could have been one, it could have been none. I'm impressed you got two right in a row though, plus the two that were.
No, I think I'm.
That's like four.
2 agenda items dropped and 2 continuance.
I guess you're just scaring them off or something. I don't know. I was too kind and cuddly.
very intimidating. Okay, let's move on to agenda item 6.6. Case number LDC 200063, Verdi Crossing. Do we have a presentation from the applicant, please?
I believe Lewis is on the line. Just one moment.
Hi, Louis Carriola from Manhart Consulting, representing SJP Property LLC. I'm hoping you can hear me and we're connected appropriately. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate Nathan's assistance in putting together the staff report. I'm going to switch to share screen. I do have a quick PowerPoint to run through. So the Verdi Crossing Special Use Permit request is located on 7.1 acres of approximately 10.2 acre site just north of Highway 80, bisected by Exit 4's off-ramp. You'll note Cabela's to the west and Boomtown to the east. The master plan designation is suburban mixed use with hotel casino zoning. The existing conditions on this site, for anyone who's had the opportunity to visit this property, is, I think, best characterized as confusing. The concrete barriers block off the northern section of the property entirely, and there's not really a clear path for vehicles, and I think even pedestrians sometimes struggle. The day when I visited the property, as you can see in that third photo, a number of RVs and large trailers were moving past pedestrians who were somewhat aimlessly walking through the parking lot. The special use permit request is made primarily to relocate and establish gaming license. The property as it's construed now, that 10.2 acre parcel, was part of an approximately 35 acre property that already had a gaming license established for many years now through multiple Washoe County and Reno entitlements. The gaming license has been moved around the property, most notably to its current location now, a truck stop, planned truck stop site to the west of Cabela's. The point being, the most of the property, a large majority of it, is still within the same parent parcel that had the original gaming license ascribed to it. Additionally, there is a small portion of the property that will require fills in excess of 10 feet. This slide demonstrates the proposed project that would follow any approval of the special use permit. North is to the left on this slide. The intended project includes a 7,500 square foot neighborhood casino. That's on the left of your slide there. And then 2 new 9,100 square foot commercial tenant spaces. The intended tenants would include potentially professional offices, but more likely restaurants, bars, and retail shops. You'll note the existing mini mart and gas canopy on the slide. They're proposed to stay in the same location. The existing development does also include a drive-through single bay car wash. That car wash bay is proposed for relocation to the west of the site, the bottom of the slide here. And you'll see with this new proposed pattern for pavement and buildings that there's clear passage from all access points to the existing site. So notably, I know I kind of ran through it quickly earlier, but the traffic circle on the west of the site, the bottom of the slide here, right now directs cars into property without clear path. And now, as you can see, the traffic pattern moves traffic straight through the property coming off the traffic circle. So someone maybe who made a wrong turn could get back onto Boomtown Garson Road and head back down to Highway 80. Additionally, the south end of the site, that's the right side of the slide, now brings vehicles to the parking areas for the new commercial buildings and also affords them easy access to the existing mini mart and gas canopy. Overall, this is an improvement on an underutilized site and presents a more compact development pattern than would be presented were the gaming license to be part of a development west of Cabela's on the truck stop site. The conceptual elevations proposed here are just that. They are conceptual, but they do depict some important features of the intended development. Notably, single-story buildings, less than the 45-foot height that would be allowed in hotel commercial zoning. And additionally, there'll be lighting associated with the casino that would not in any way even come close to the allowances within the HC zoning district, which I believe only have a limitation of 100 feet for monument signs and virtually unlimited standards for the number of signs and locations of them. The application submitted, and as part of Nathan's staff report, you'll note a sign plan depicting what the general idea and limitations for signs would be. And this final conceptual elevation is an idea for what the casino and associated restaurants would look like. You'll notice a parapet that's a bit taller for signage, but again, nothing approaching the height limitation for the property. With that, I can be available for questions. I'm not sure if Nathan was planning on making some sort of presentation as well. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Nathan Gilbert, Associate Planner. No, I did get an opportunity to review the applicant's presentation. Staff does concur with the information presented. We do appreciate the initial community outreach that the applicant and the representatives did in working with staff with the conditions, as Lewis outlined, specifically limiting the sign to the sign program as here, and with the termination of the existing truck stop and gaming entitlement on the property west of Cabela's. Staff does support a recommendation to City Council for all of the listed special use permits, and we are available for any questions.
Great, thank you, Nathan. Commissioners, disclosures? Commissioner Olivas?
Commissioner Olivas, I visited the site and received email.
Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, as did I.
Commissioner Gower?
Commissioner Gower, I visited the site, received the email, and spoke with the applicant's representative.
Thank you. Commissioner Velto?
Commissioner Velter visited the site and reviewed emails.
Commissioner Taylor, as did I. Michelle, this is a public hearing. Do we have any request to speak forms on this item?
I did not receive any requests to speak.
Okay, thank you. We will close public comment and bring it back to the commission for discussion and questions. Who wants to start us off?
Madam Chair, I have a quick question. For the applicant or staff. So I didn't notice it in my site visit, but I'm looking at the aerial imagery of the site, and I'm seeing a helicopter landing pad. Is that any sort of emergency use or, you know, fire operation pad? I just wanted to see if that was included in your consideration of the application.
Absolutely. Nathan Gilbert, Associate Planner. That was an initial staff comment. That's a good catch. We did bring that to the applicant's attention. Rob Medeiros with Boomtown had an interesting story on that. We did run that by the airport. There is no emergency service or use for that. That was apparently sort of a luxury helicopter landing for the casino at one time, but there is no emergency service use for that, and it was run by the airport.
will be incorporated into the project in any way. It'll just be abandoned.
It will be abandoned.
Okay, thanks, Nathan.
Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question, I guess, for the applicant. The special use permit for the fills, I noticed when I was on the site that basically just looks like an excavated pit. It doesn't appear to be any kind of drainage situation. Is there any history or any special requirements that need to be done as a part of that fill, or is it truly just something that was a leftover hole and is completely surrounded by site and roadway development?
I can share what we know about the site. So I'd be hesitant to just call it a leftover hole, but I think that would be an accurate depiction. So yes, it was originally excavated with the intent of accommodating stormwater runoff from adjacent development, which then was constructed with its own stormwater retention and detention facilities. The site improvement permit for any future development there would, of course, have to be approved and designed and sized, but it will be significantly smaller. So it will be, approved fill. It'll go through engineering testing for compaction and all the normal processes associated with site improvement and building permits.
Okay. And then second question, kind of following up on the concerns from the public that came in, and I did notice it when I was out there. Is there any intended upgrade to that south entrance, whether it's signage or striping on the access road to kind of more clearly indicate the one-way traffic and the entrance in from what's existing that's, I guess, maybe outside of the boundaries of the site where you've clarified it once you get on the site, but is there any intent to maybe address some of the signage or striping on the way in?
I don't know that we're at that sort of granular level of development details yet. At this point, with the special use permit associated with the use and the potential fills over 10 feet, we haven't gotten to that design stage. However, I'm sure at the site improvement stage, we would have opportunities to maybe work with NDOT as well as work with staff on ensuring that off-site signage was adequate and met public safety requirements. So the answer would be there's no reason we wouldn't be able to look at it in the future. I just don't know it's been part of the discussion yet.
Thank you, Louis. Nathan, anything from staff's perspective on that?
No, I think Louis's response, staff would concur with that.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. That was my questions for applicant.
Thank you. Other questions, commissioners? Commissioner Velto?
No questions.
Okay, you are unmuted.
Thank you.
Do we have any discussion or a motion? Are we still awake?
Madam Chair, I'm ready to make a motion if there's no discussion.
Please do.
Okay. In the case number LDC 20-00063, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to recommend that City Council approve the special use permit, subject to the conditions included in the staff report.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Johnson, I'm going to second it. I just wanted to ask a quick question, and maybe I'm just not seeing it in the staff report. Is this being a recommendation to City Council because of the involvement of the hotel casino entitlement? Is that the reason for that recommendation?
Nathan Gilbert, that's correct, Commissioner Johnson. Because this is a recommendation to council because of the non-conforming gaming entitlement, and per legal's purview, all the special use permits are wrapped into that for council decision.
Okay. I just wanted clarification on that. Thank you. So yes, I'll second the motion. I can make all the findings.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll go into a vote. Commissioner Olivas?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Gower?
Yes.
Commissioner Velto?
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor, yes. Motion passes unanimously. Good luck with your project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us into agenda item number 7, Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Liaison Report. Commissioner Gower?
Madam Chair, I'll just give a brief report. We have a meeting tomorrow night, and the purpose of the meeting is primarily to review applications that were provided for the Director of Regional Planning and to provide a recommendation to the Regional Planning Governing Board. There were, I believe, 4 applications that were submitted. One of them was from the current interim director, Jeremy Smith. Another one from a gentleman in Fallon, the planning director there, and then 2 from California. So the Planning Commission will be reviewing those and providing a recommendation to the governing board.
Thank you.
I believe
The staff.
we also have a meeting, our regularly scheduled meeting is the following week as well, I believe.
You're a step ahead of me, Commissioner Johnson.
I just saw the email today. That's the only reason I knew it.
Angela, you want to take us through some staff announcements?
We do not have any staff announcements. We will be resuming our city council meetings next week, and then we'll have 2 meetings back to back. So I will have updates for you at your August 5th meeting on any decisions made by those 2 council meetings. And otherwise, no staff announcements.
I did receive an update via AGC from the Community Development Department, and I just wanted to thank you and your team for still reaching out to people and doing everything that you can to keep us all updated in these interesting times. So thank you very much for doing that.
Absolutely. And if any of you as planning commissioners want to be added to that list, I call it the development stakeholder list. Let me know. I can add your guys' email. We just give updates on kind of trends with development, what we're seeing in terms of like how many building permits have come in, how many planning cases have come in, just things we think the development community would be interested in knowing. But I'm more than happy to share that with you guys and add you to that list as well.
Okay, thank you. Item number 9, Commissioner's suggestions for future agenda items.
Madam Chair, if I could just propose one thing, either an update from staff or maybe a brief conversation on a future agenda item related to kind of the perspective of how things have been going with the virtual meeting and engagement with the public. I guess it was a little bit concerning for me tonight to see, you know, we received so many emails on the items, and obviously there was a concern from the public, but when it came right down to it, we didn't really have any public comment during the meeting that we probably would, you know, if we were meeting in person. So, you know, if we could just have a kind of an update on that from staff's perspective. And then I guess the second part of that is, you know, when applicants go back and reach out to the community, you know, traditionally they have a meeting. You know, I think everyone's kind of defaulting to a Zoom meeting, but you know, are there other strategies that can be employed? And I'm thinking like, you know, if someone like John Kropotkin goes like door to door or facilitates like, you know, small group or individual conversations in driveways or something like that. So there's that socially distanced face to face. I just want to make sure that we're not losing touch with the public engagement piece, because I felt that disconnect a little bit tonight.
Yeah, I was really surprised too that there wasn't more public comment based on the amount of emails that we received. But I do understand that I think Zoom can be a little intimidating.
Commissioner Leaders, I think it's interesting. I agree with what you guys said, but I also think it's nice to see some of the comments beforehand to kind of pre-read them and think them through a little bit too. So that's a different twist on that.
Commissioner Johnson, I guess one comment to follow up, because I saw it in a couple of the comments that came to us, is there is a little bit of concern that just no meetings whatsoever of the NABs. It seems like there's even potentially some breakdown in the distribution of these items to the NAB members, and whether that's just the NAB members not paying attention or how that is going through. So I guess to Commissioner Gower's original point, maybe if there's some update as to how that outreach is being addressed would be helpful as part of that presentation.
Okay, we can definitely I'll add an agenda item just to give you guys just a broader overview. We'll do that at the next council meeting, or I'm sorry, Planning Commission meeting on August 5th.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Angela.
Okay, number 10, public comment. Do we have any public comment, Michelle?
No, I did not receive any requests to speak on this item.
It's a good segue. And our favorite number 11?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
So moved. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.